What's up, Bohemian Rhapsody?
Not much. Tony Danza. How are you?
Man, I'm all right. I'm all right. It's been a pretty good day.
Yeah, man.
Just trying to, as well as we do these on Tuesdays, and so typically on Tuesday, I'm like, man, dude, I'm ready for Friday. When I was stationed at Leonard Wood, they used to call it. I would make it to Tuesday, and I'd be like, all right, we're almost to Friday, and they would refer to it as leaning forward in the foxhole. They'd be like, you leaning forward in the foxhole, huh? I'm like, yeah, yes, absolutely.
Oh, sure. I'm
So,
I'm always leaning forward then because I always want it to be Friday.
yep, I'm ready for Friday on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Well, you ready to start building the bar?
let's do it. All right. So this is episode 11 of our Build a Bar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what has the great Bohemian Rhapsody got for us tonight?
All right. So tonight, I am actually bringing to the table one of my favorite rye whiskeys. This is Old Forester Rye, 100 proof. I wanted to say it was bottled and bond, but I don't think it is. It's just 100 proof.
Are you buffering right now?
No, yeah. Hold on, I should have looked this up too. It doesn't say bottled in bond. So anyway, 100 proof rye.
100 proof. Oh, okay. All right. Well, uh, I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that.
So, with this 100 proof Old Forester Rye, why should this be on anybody's bar?
The reason I chose this rye over any other, like a bullet rye is a famous one, Sazerac rye. There's a lot of different ryes out there that are probably equally as good, but I chose this one because it's a fairly new product, meaning it came out in 2019, and it's one of the most unique and smoothest ryes that I've ever tasted. And we'll get into some of the tasting notes and stuff in a little bit, but it's one of my favorite bottles because my favorite rye bottles because it's just super smooth and it's got characteristics to me that other ryes don't have. So
Okay.
that's why.
That's why.
Yeah.
I'm glad we cleared that up because I was wondering about that. Who made this product?
So as the name implies, it's made by Old Forester. And if you know a whole lot about the 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 brand Old Forester, they're basically known for their bourbons. And one bourbon in particular they're known for is their birthday bourbon. And so it's that's sought after from like all the the high end bourbon collectors. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean it's a pretty penny, but they put out their birthday bourbon, Old Forester birthday bourbon, every September 2nd, which is the birthday of the founder, George Garvin Brown. Um, and so it's his birthday. So uh, they're known for that bourbon, but they also have like an Old Forester, bourbon. But so this one came out, like I said, in 2019, and it's the first time in almost 150 years that they put out a product other than like bourbon or whiskey.
Wow. Okay. 150 years?
Yeah, so they started I think around 1870, I think is when they started. And so 2019 is when they put out this rye whiskey.
Okay. So, what is the mash bill for this specific brand?
So it's an interesting mash bill, and I think the mash bill is probably the reason that I like this so much. So basically, it's a historic recipe that was founded by Owsley Brown, who was the son of George Garvin Brown. So the son of the founder of Old Forester, who kind of took over later. But it's it's a mash bill of 65% rye, 20% malted barley, and 15% corn. And so when I was reading about it, there's no need for any kind of enzymes making this because of the high malted barley content. And I think that's why that malted barley, I think that's what kind of mellows this out a little bit. So it, when you think of a traditional rye, it's got a good bit of spice to it. And this does have that spice, but it's a lot mellower of a product than most other ryes. So I think it
Really?
has a lot to do with this mash bill. Yeah.
Okay. All right. But it still does have, just for my own personal, because I've never had this before, it still does have that spice to it.
Oh yeah, you could tell it's a rye, but I mean, we'll get to some of the takes and notes in a minute.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the label. Like who's it named after? What's it named after?
So it's not really named after anything specific other than just it's a rye whiskey, but I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about George Garvin Brown. And so Old Forester was the first company to put their whiskey in glass bottles. So if you think about, and this happened in 1870-ish. And so one of their claim to fame was they wanted, this was back, think about this. This was back in the time where, rectifiers were doing whatever they wanted to whiskey, adding tobacco spit to it, or adding battery acid to it, or adding whatever they wanted to it to give it the look and flavor of what whiskey was supposed to taste like. So George Garvin Brown decided, he was in pharmaceuticals, and then he decided to go over to the whiskey industry, but he wanted his whiskey to be like as transparent as could be. So he put it in glass bottles so you could see through it. You could see that there was nothing hidden in it. And so, but think about this though. So you and I talk a lot about bottled in bond. Bottled in bond didn't happen until 1897. This was 1870. So he was ahead of the curve as far as wanting to really, be transparent and put out the best quality product that he could. So that's pretty interesting. And so, I mean, they've done that with all their products. So, I mean, that's what this label kind of stands for, is quality.
I remember a couple of episodes ago, we did early times bottled and bond.
Right.
And one of the things that I remember about that podcast is I was talking about early times being, that whole distillery being around early times station. And you had chimed in about that and was talking about this George Garvin Brown,
right?
Because I think it was around that same time. And whenever you said his name just a while ago, I knew that name sounded familiar, and I completely forgot that he was the first one not only to put whiskey in bottles, but to essentially regulate the whiskey industry.
Yeah, he was certainly part of that. He was certainly part of the initial parts of, wanting whiskey to be cleaned up, and you get what you pay for. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of his claim to fame.
And I don't mean to spend too much time on this, but one of the things that I do enjoy is that, somebody like that, because when we take these people today, you kind of hear people that are like, oh, that's just a goody two shoes, or he's this or he's that. But he saw a profit in being transparent and making a very good product. And the essential, because, you're a Western fan, I'm a Western fan. And, I remember hearing stories about, whiskey back in the day was made with tobacco leaves and tobacco spit, and that's what gave it its color and its character. And he was like, no, I got a way to clean this up and I know this isn't about him. I just, those stories I get into. And so I think it's cool, man.
Also another little tidbit, and I've read this on several occasions. So But I think back in the 1800s, it wasn't necessarily that people had their stuff in, other type bottles, whatever, but it was kind of customary that if you went into a saloon, on the back bar would be barrels. And so the whiskey would be in barrels. And that's kind of how the barrel head got its, like, became famous, because the barrels would be sitting up, and on the barrel head would be the name of the whiskey. And so you would go and they would tap that and get your whiskey out of it. So it wasn't all that George Garvin Brown was saying, put it in bottles instead of like a, plastic jug or whatever. It wasn't that. It was to take away from like the barrel, because even though it was in barrels, you didn't know what was in the barrel. And so what he was trying to say was, I want to put it in a clear bottle so that whenever the barkeep, or when you buy a bottle, you can see through it and you can see what's in it and see that there's no spit in there, or no battery acid or whatever. So, but it was to, back then it was kind of customary to have the barrels back there, and the barkeep would kind of tap from those barrels. So
tap from that.
Yeah.
Well,
that's kind
George Garvin Brown would be very distraught at the military today. And here's why. Quick story, and I'll press on. We have a custom in the military. We have this bar on base, right? There's typically like an NCO club or whatever. And so what we do is that there is a bottle. Nobody really knows what it is except for the barkeeps, I guess, but it's wrapped up in like electrical tape or duct tape or some type of wrapping paper or whatever. And so you say, and anybody is welcome to it. And so you're like, hey, I want to pour that. Catcher is that if you are the last one to do it, you buy the next bottle. You don't know what it is. And so that's a little bit of a military tradition for the podcast.
That's a cool little thing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I found that out and in Altus. I was like, what is that? Like, we can't tell you, but do you want to pour? Yeah, well, sure. So a little interestingly enough game, I guess.
That's cool.
Does this bottle have any other expressions?
So no other expressions of, well, there's one other expression, but if you look at the label on this, it's basically the same label as the Old Forester flagship bourbon, and it's got the rye tag on it. So they kind of want you to know that it's in the same family. It's kind of it's a flagship product now. It's not necessarily the flagship, but it's kind of on par with what their flagship bourbon is. But this, like I said, this came out in 2019. And that same year, the other expression of this is a single barrel strength version of their rye. So it came out later in 2019. But and honestly, I've never seen that before. I've never seen that on the shelves, or I certainly would get one.
Yeah, me and you both.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's probably high dollar. Speaking of high dollar, what would somebody expect to pay for this bottle?
So the other reason I put this on the bar is, or propose to put this on the bar, is, like I said, it's unique for a rye. It's smooth for a rye. I mean, like I said, it's got I know you and I like the kick of rye, and it's got that kick, but it's smooth. But the other thing is the price. So Booze App basically puts this an average MSRP of about $24. A fair price is $34, but I'll tell you this right here. This is a 750 milliliter. I paid $18 for this. And over here, I have a liter bottle, and I paid about $25 for this liter bottle.
So you paid under what the MSRP is.
Yeah, for sure. That's a pretty high MSRP. Even the store I go to usually has stuff on sale, pretty good sale. But even when the most I've ever paid for a 750 milliliter bottle of this is $22. So
golly, man.
Yeah. So you can't beat it. And like I say, it's 100 proof, so it's a good stout liquid. And I'm telling you, man. Wait till you try it.
Yeah, I may see if this weekend if there's one at the shop at. So, well, okay. So I'm down here in Arkansas.
Hmm.
How hard is this bottle to find?
I would venture to say it isn't hard at all because when it first came out, so the first time I ever heard about this, me and Steve were actually filming some stuff back in
Hmm.
2019. And it had first came out, and I was actually in Louisville filming some stuff, and we found a bottle of it, and I bought a bottle. And since then, I lived in Tennessee for a whole year after that. I could find it all day long in Tennessee. I mean, obviously I can find it all day long here in Kentucky, but I've been to Mississippi a time or two and I've seen it down there. So it should be fairly easy to find. I mean, you might have to, so even up here, sometimes I'll go to like a liquor store that I usually go to, and they may not have it. They may be out or something, and then but I can usually go to one or two, maybe three liquor stores, and I'll find it. So it should be fairly easy to find. I mean, any store that
Okay.
carries Old Forester or anything will have it.
I'm definitely going to try to find some of that this weekend.
You need to, bro.
Well, let's get to the good stuff. Really everything has been great thus far, and I do appreciate all of your workings and other stuff. But really and truly, let's get to the good part.
What does it
What
taste
should
like?
that? What does it taste like? What should the drinker be tasting?
All right. I want to first off say, I don't know if we may have had this conversation before, but I don't know. Whenever I drink a rye, when I sip on rye, I taste one of two things. I
Mm-hmm.
either get like a grassy kind of hayish, kind of earthy. I either get that, or I get a lot of mint. Like I've had ryes before that like you taste it and immediately it tastes like almost like double mint gum. So those are the two most frequent flavors I get out of ryes. With that being said, the best part about this is, and even let me say this, even when I do have taste the minty ones, it's still real earthy, which is good, and I like that. The difference in this, so when you nose it, I get a lot of that. It's almost like a clove and a mint. I get that a lot. It's a lot sweeter to me on the nose than a lot of other ryes. But when you taste it, right off the bat, you get I get like mint and I get some mint, but it's sweet. And um once you kind of get mid palate, that's when you get things like vanilla and I say cherry slash cherry wood. It's got a lot of wood flavor to it. Um, but it drinks to me, it drinks more like a bourbon than a rye. And I mean that because I mean that, if you take a traditional bourbon, like if you were to take Old Forester 80, their 100, their bottled in bond bourbon or their 86 flagship bourbon, it's going to be a lot sweeter than this. But this has a lot of sweetness to it that I think a lot of other ryes don't have. And so it almost drinks like a bourbon. Um, but the end, like once you kind of get on the back palate and the aftertaste, the like it brings back that sweetness. So to me, I mean, it almost tastes like it's a rye and a bourbon mixed. Like it just that sweetness is there, and I like it. And like I say, it's different to me than any other rye that I've tasted. And for $22 or $18 or whatever you pay for it, this absolutely should be sitting on your bar.
Okay, so I've got a quick question about that.
Do it.
Do you think that some of the sweetness in that, because 65% rye is a heavy rye.
Yeah,
Okay, that could be classified as a high rye, right?
yeah.
Um, do you think that the reason that it's like that sweetness with that hint of mint is because being 15% corn, we talked about in latter podcasts or YouTube casts that corn mellows things out. Do you think that some of that, the lackness in corn allows that natural rye to come through?
Well, and I think, and I did read this today that like the 20% malted barley
Yeah.
helps mellow it out. So if you think about a traditional bourbon has 5, maybe 10% malted barley. You know, a lot of them don't have a whole lot of malted barley. And, you know, the reason is that the malted barley is there to just, you know, we've talked about this before, but it's there to kind of convert all that stuff. But I
Right.
think 20% malted barley is a lot of malted barley. And I read today where that really does help offset that sharpness of the rye. So it's still there, but like I said, and also I will say this, I did read where they age these in brand new charred oak barrels. So a traditional rye can be, it doesn't have to be brand new. It could be aged in a bourbon barrel. It could be aged in whatever. So it's
I
aged
did
in a
not know that.
it's in a new barrel. So I think I'm right on that. I'm pretty sure that other whiskeys can, I mean, other ryes, some other ryes are aged in bourbon barrels. Um, but I did read where they age it in new charred oak barrels, so that might have something to do with the
Huh.
sweetness. But like I said about mid palate, you pull out some of that like slight hint of vanilla, but I do get a good bit of cherry and cherry wood, and what I mean by cherry wood, you and I do a lot of smoking, and you know when you get that, you know, when I have like wood chips and like cherry wood and I dip my hand there and like you just smell of it, you can smell the cherry in the cherry wood.
Yeah.
And so that's what I taste. I taste a lot of that cherry, but it's got the wood with it. So it tastes a lot like cherry wood. And I mean, it's a good drinker for sure.
I'm gonna get some this weekend. Um, Thank you for that. I've enjoyed just kind of getting to know this one in particular. Not that the others that we've done have any, but this one in particular seems a little bit more complex. I enjoy this. So I think that we both agree that this needs to be on everybody's bar. Would you
Yeah,
agree?
I would agree. And honestly, dude, like when I was going back over my notes and getting ready for it, I had actually thought we had put another rye rye whiskey on here, but we haven't. This is the first rye whiskey we've put on here. So
No, we talked about at the very beginning. I cannot remember the one that I think I did. I don't remember the one that I did, but I mentioned that one of the expressions, wild turkey. I was talking about the expression of rye, but it doesn't seem like this is anything like that. Not that it's better or worse. So the people
mhm.
at Wild Turkey, please on it, but it seems very different.
Yeah, I'm like I said, this one to me, and I mean, I don't. You might taste it and say, "Dude, you're a moron," but to me, like I do like I like a rye whiskey, and I mean, I have on my bar here at the house, I got 5 or 6 different rye whiskeys that, you know, some of them are real stout, some of them are, you know, got a real good kick to it, but like I said, the earthy ones they taste real earthy and a
Yeah.
hint of sweetness kind of comes through in mid palate or the end, but on this one, man, it's like I mean it's sweet all the way through, but it doesn't the sweetness does not take away from the to me like what makes it a rye, that minty whatever. So it doesn't take away from it.
Yeah.
It binds it together, I think.
Okay. So last question, and this is not on
Oh, dude.
our
Go ahead.
usual, but would the sweetness that this brings through, could you classify this as a dessert bourbon, or is it not like that?
It's not that sweet, but I did read a couple reviews of this, and one guy said that he uses it like when he makes cocktails, like Manhattans are made with
Oh
rye.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so like he says he uses this for all of his Manhattans because it adds an extra layer of complexity to it. So I can totally see that.
Dude, I know that you cannot do this, but I'm telling you here in the next few days, I bet this would pair very well with a nice cigar. I know you can't do that, asthma and things like that.
Oh yeah.
For those that are listening that can, I would bet this would pair very well with a nice 10-year cigar.
Dude, I'm telling you, this weekend, go get a bottle of it and then let me know what you think. Because I guarantee you will not be. You're the one that turned me on to rye whiskey in the first place. When I very first before I'd even met my buddy Steve and I was filming and doing all this stuff, I would just pick up a bottle of, and I couldn't tell you the difference in bourbon and Tennessee whiskey or whatever. But you're the one that got me into rye, and probably one of the first ryes I had was Bullet Rye. And I mean, I wasn't disappointed at all in Bullet Rye, but to me, I just remember it was very much more earthy and like almost like I said, hay and like grassy and stuff than like bourbon and stuff. But this, if I had tasted this first, this would have been like, it would have blown my mind that a rye could taste like this.
You know what's weird about this, and this is to me just a different tasting note. Now, I can't speak on this specific brand because I've never had it. But have you ever been in a field where they're cutting hay and you get that certain sweet smell? It's a sweet, earthy smell. Well, I've chased this smell for about 16 years. And back in 2020, Courtney and I went to the Buffalo River, which is probably one of my favorite places on this entire earth. And I smelled the smell and I was tracing it. So I swam across the river to this place. And what that smell is that grows actually in these hay fields is called wild lavender. It's not what you think it is. Like whenever you take a bubble bath with lavender, I know you like to take a lot of.
I do. I'm a bubble bath bomb like expert, and I'm a connoisseur of that. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And I knew that. And so it's not like that type of lavender, but it's a wild lavender, and it's got a certain sweetness and earthy smell. But it's lavender, and you wouldn't think it. I've always thought maybe alfalfa or anything like that.
Yeah.
That sounds like this is kind of what that tastes like. And so I'm really anxious to see, because now that my taste buds are wide open and I'm salivating, I want to try this for that reason. I think it's going to be very good.
Now, I will say, man, you've watched me. I've been sipping on this the whole time we're talking, and I do have a burn on my tongue. Like when you drink a lot of rye, you get that burn. That's what that kick is. But so I do have that burn on my tongue. So it's definitely like I don't want to downplay the spiciness of the rye at all, because it's still there, but it's just got a sweetness to it that no other ones have that I've tasted.
Well, I think that we can agree that this deserves to be on everybody's bar, and I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that too, man.
All right, brother, man. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for the enlightenment.
Yes, sir.
And I'm glad that you finally got the chance to express your love for bubble baths.
Singing in the bathtub, singing all alone, tearing out a tonsil just like a baritone.
And next week, we will continue. Until then, same bad time, same bad channel.
All right. Love you, man.
Love you, brother.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard tonight, check us out on these social media platforms. Just search for My Journey Through the American Spirits. Also, check us out on our new website,